Hey everybody, it's JB Eckl. Welcome to my studio that I just finished getting set up in the last few days up here in Northern California. We managed to avoid the fires and everything so far, so fingers crossed on that one. But it's lovely up here in Northern California, and I've been crawling around wiring the place up. And I wanted to just share a few things with you guys today about what happens in here and how RME is integrated into my workflow. Whether I'm doing stuff with my band, Dig Infinity, or working on my own music, or composing and production gigs and things like that. So, as you can see, it's full of instruments. It's kind of all about instruments. In here, I've got my Moog synth. I've got an electronic drum over here. I've got Ableton Live going, and I'm just a guitar player mostly, so you see a lot of guitar-oriented gear here. A lot of amplifiers, a ton of different kind of guitar sounds, pedals galore, and I'll show you all that stuff in a minute, so you can kind of get a little tour of how everything works in here. But mostly tonight, I just wanted to talk about my discovery of the RME FireFace UFX II, which is the audio interface at the heart of this whole rig. It was a journey of discovery a little bit, figuring out what was going to be that main element that goes between the instruments and the computer and kind of translates everything and makes a beautiful, pure sound. I've been hearing about RME gear for years and years, but I finally got a chance to get into it over the last, I'd say, 2 years or so, off the recommendation of an engineer friend of mine who said that I had to check it out, and I followed that advice, and I ended up choosing the FireFace UFX II. And there were a lot of reasons behind that. One of them is just the sound of it. The sound is extremely pure, and it was very noticeable when we plugged it in and tried it the very first time. It was not a subtle thing. We noticed immediately that the sound seemed to be very immediate and just musical somehow. I know that's a terrible adjective to use for anything musical, but that was part of it. Part of it was just the sound of it. It was obviously a step up from anything that we had used before. And then the next thing is the connectivity. I won't go too deep into specs here, but there is a ton of connectivity on the FireFace UFX II. So I'm starting to use more and more of it. What I've realized recently is that I actually want to have all the instruments plugged in at the same time. And that's what creates a cool workflow for me. So right now, for example, I have this load box, the aux on top of my amplifier back there, and that's delivering a real tube amp electric guitar sound along with all my pedals and everything right into the rig. And it's always up, so I never have to think about, oh, let me crawl around and hook up the guitar. It's just there. And it's a no compromise sound. It's coming straight from the real rig that I would use on in a concert or a recording session. And that's the same setup that I use for live streams. That's one of the other things here is that you're seeing this is a GoPro, and everything is set up here exactly the same as it would be if I was doing a live stream. So I'm going to keep this sort of in that spirit. I'm going to keep it kind of raw and just roll through the whole thing as if we were live. So that's the guitar. The guitar is just always in, and it's coming up in the TotalMix software, and I can control the level of that, but I don't have to have software open or a digital audio workstation or anything to hear that. And the same goes for the other stuff. I've got the Moog going here. It's kind of quiet, but it's there. And then I've got my drum going. So everything's like that, and it's going to be more and more like that as time goes by. I'm going to have each input hooked up to a different thing, so that in the heat of the moment of composing or working on a track, I can just start layering stuff and throwing things on. And if I have a musician over here, I've got a bass player or somebody singing or anything that's going on, I just want to have everything up. And this interface has eliminated the need for a mixer. You can see I don't have a desk here or a mixer, even a little digital mixer or anything like that, because that's what I'm using TotalMix for. I'm using the RME as an audio interface, but also just as a mixer. So that way everything can be up at all times. So that's the idea behind that. I'm actually working on this little track that I was just playing the little Moog riff from that. I'll show you guys what's going on with this thing. Let's see if it'll work for me. Okay, that's just the bass. It's a very slow track. It's a very late night kind of a thing. Let's see about this. There's the Moog and a bass. It's at 95 BPM and it's half time, so 42 and a half. Let's see where this thing goes. So I can just layer guitars on top of this. I came up with this little beat last night and this little vibe. So eventually it'll turn into a real song. But for now, you can hear it. And all the pedals and everything are hooked up. I can play my little drum here too. You get the idea. So everything's just up, and you know, that creates an environment where you feel free to express your creativity and do whatever needs to be done. Drop it back to just the bass and the synth here. So you get the idea. Just a little late night meditation jam for you. Some kind of dubby music. Who knows what we would sing or what else we would want to put on that. But once you get the live players going and you start passing the files around, you know how we do it nowadays, quarantine style, and see what becomes of it. But that's just the kind of thing that happens when you're staying up late and you're just seeing what comes. And that's the key to this whole setup. I'm going to show you the details of that in a second here. But first, I wanted to mention another piece of RME gear that I've been using a lot, which is the Babyface Pro FS. Now, the Babyface is a tiny little guy that fits in your pocket and basically takes this beautiful sound and gives you a to-go version of that. And we put together a little promotional clip for the Babyface Pro. So check that out, and then we'll come back in a second and I'll give you the little tour. Okay, so here's just a real quick tour of what's going on in the studio. As I mentioned, tons and tons of guitars. There's even a little mandolin down there. Some 70s lamps that have yet to see their full fruition because they need shades. Some lovely guitars, of course, all over the place. There's guitars and amps. I am all about real tube amps and also digital emulations like Scuffum S-Gear and Line 6 Helix. Hybrid digital meets analog is the name of the game here. I'm a Mesa artist and a Line 6 artist, so there you go. That probably tells you everything you need to know about that. I'm also a pedal freak. So I won't go into it, but basically this whole rig is the pedals. You can kind of see what's going on. There's a wild card pedal area here on top, and those are always moving and in flux. And then the rest of this stuff is hardwired. And I've got a mixer down here that mixes my, when I'm on stage, that mixes my electronic drum and even a laptop or just anything else that needs to get integrated into the rig. And then here I've got a looper, and it also does vocal effects. I've got my microphone usually plugged into that, even does harmonies and stuff. Here's some wonderful Chase Bliss pedals. Both of these were on when you heard that guitar on the dub thing. This delay was doing the freaky, wobbly analog delay. And then you've got a wah-wah, a beautiful BBE wah-wah pedal that I love. There's my Line 6 Helix running the whole show. There's the Moog synth that you saw and heard before. And here we go with the workstation. There is the lovely RME FireFace UFX II. You can see that there's a few things plugged into the front inputs, but there's also stuff plugged into the back, which, as you can see, I've got going on a patch bay here. So no, I am not interested in going around back and seeing what's going on behind this thing. Another RME piece here that you need to see is the ARC USB. This is great because that's my main volume control. That's also where I switch speakers or switch headphones or do talkback or any of that kind of stuff. So another RME thing. Any of you guys that are using RME stuff in a studio environment, you probably want to get one of these because it's just a nice way to have your hands on in the same way that you would with a big mixing desk. And there's my Pro Tools controller, all the nerdy stuff. Got some Dynaudio speakers. Got a Moroccan lamp back there that's not on. And the drum, another keyboard. You get the picture. But this is the key right here. Everything's going in. I'm also running some stuff through the AES input on the back too. As you can see here, I've got a preamp made by A Designs and a compressor and another preamp under it, Langevin preamp made by Manley, and then at the bottom I've got a Burl B2 Bomber, which is a wonderful analog sounding, well, not analog sounding, but a very analog big fat transformer thing. There's Ableton doing its thing. And that's the studio. That's a lot of stuff, but doesn't take up a lot of space. So you would never know if you're walking through the woods of Northern California, you would never know that this is going on in here. Okay, so there you go. That's the tour. That's the madness that we have going on in here. Hope it all made sense and wasn't too deep into the nerdery, but I think that's what we're about here. I feel safe. I feel like I'm among friends. You can know the full truth of the depth of the nuttiness that goes on when you're trying to set something like this up. A couple more words about TotalMix. TotalMix, I'm understanding it a lot more. At first, I wasn't really dealing with it, but now I'm starting to see the power of TotalMix as just kind of the environment, the studio environment that all your instruments live in. And for example, one of the things that I'm doing right now is that I've enabled on the input of this microphone, there is a compressor and a low cut filter going, just to give it a little more of a broadcast quality sound for you guys. And that's just on the input. That's coming from TotalMix. So as the mic, as the signal goes in, it's coming in already processed. And that really helps when you're doing a live stream, especially. But also stuff like this, you just know that you've got all those tools at your disposal. You can add in other effects too in TotalMix, like if you want to hear reverb on your vocal but you don't want to record it, things like that, to create a vibe while you're tracking a vocal. All that kind of stuff is in there, and there's a ton of flexibility in terms of where the faders go, what they're routed to. It's a deep thing, once you start to learn what it's capable of, you realize that you're running a big studio in a very small environment, because you can have different pieces of software routed out to different things. You can have multiple sets of speakers. You can have a couple of pairs of headphones on here. There's talk back, there's loop back, all the functionality that you'd want from a mixing console, and it's all right there in TotalMix. So I'm really learning the value of that also, with thanks to Derek and Jeff and all the RME guys. They're helping me to get my guitar player brain wrapped around that environment. But yeah, so hopefully it's helpful for you guys just to see kind of how this stuff gets integrated into a small studio environment like this. Of course, you know, these pieces of gear are very much at home in huge studios and on stage, you know, on big tours and the Super Bowl and all those other huge famous places where you're going to find RME gear all over the world. But in my example, it's a very personal setup. It's a very intimate environment. It's all about the writing and the arranging and the composing, all that stuff, and the flow of, you know, getting everything out of the way of the music. So that's what I'm about right here, and hopefully that made sense to you guys. So definitely check out the Babyface Pro and the FireFace UFX II. They really are just central to everything that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and I would imagine they will be for the foreseeable future. So very grateful to the guys at RME and to my friend Kelly Snook that originally turned me on to this gear in the first place. So yeah, hope you guys have a lovely evening. I'm gonna see what else I can get out of this little tune tonight. And then eventually go to sleep.